The late afternoon sun poured through the curtains of the study room, painting golden streaks over textbooks and scribbled notes. Alex's pen hovered above his notebook, his attention drifting away from trigonometry equations and toward the woman sitting across from him. Ms. Carter's voice was calm and clear, guiding him through the formulas with patience he hadn't experienced from anyone else. It had been 6 months since she'd started tutoring him. What began as weekly sessions to boost his grades had quickly transformed into something more. Their conversations often meandered away from academics, touching on books, movies, even philosophical debates about life and happiness. Somehow, with her, Alex felt truly seen. Ms. Carter was more than just his tutor. She was a friend. And lately, something more than that. He caught himself watching the way her hair fell over her shoulder, how her lips curved softly when she laughed. It was a warmth that crept into his chest and refused to leave, a sensation he tried to bury beneath homework and casual jokes but never could. Alex. Ms. Carter's voice snapped him back to the present. Her eyebrows arched, a playful smile teasing her lips. You completely spaced out on me. What's on your mind? He hesitated, his fingers tracing the edges of his notebook. The urge to confess had been building for weeks, a pressure pushing against his ribs with every unspoken thought. Today, he couldn't hold it in any longer. Ms. Carter, can I tell you something? The amusement faded from her expression, replaced by a curiosity tinged with concern. Of course. What's bothering you? He swallowed hard, his pulse thundering in his ears. It's not something that's bothering me. Not exactly. It's just, I've been thinking a lot, and I think I like you. More than just as my tutor. The words hung in the air like fragile glass, waiting to shatter. His gaze dropped to the desk, afraid to see the rejection written across her face. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, softly, Alex. I know. It's completely inappropriate. And I'm sorry if this ruins everything. But I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't there. His voice shook, the vulnerability leaving him feeling exposed and ridiculous. She let out a slow breath, her eyes searching his with an intensity that made his heart clench. Alex, this isn't easy for me to hear. But if I'm being honest, you're not the only one who's been struggling with complicated feelings. His head jerked up, disbelief and hope mingling in his gaze. You mean? I mean that I care about you, Alex. More than I probably should. But this is complicated. And if we go down this road, we have to be sure it's what we really want. The words were like a lifeline, pulling him from the abyss of doubt. I want to try. If you do. Ms. Carter's smile was hesitant but genuine, her eyes holding his with a determination that felt like a promise. Then maybe, we can figure this out together. Days turned into weeks, and their connection deepened with every meeting. What once were simple tutoring sessions transformed into something far more personal. Lessons became an excuse to spend time together, their laughter echoing through the cozy study room as they strayed off topic, diving into conversations about their dreams, fears, and everything in between. Ms. Carter had begun to let her guard down. Her formality softened into warmth, her smile reaching her eyes more often. They would sit close enough for their shoulders to brush, the touch sending a thrilling jolt through Alex every time. It was as if the air itself had changed, thickened with unspoken affection neither was brave enough to fully name. One evening, as rain pattered against the windows, Ms. Carter closed the textbook with a sigh. I think you've earned a break, Alex. You've been nailing every problem I throw at you. Maybe that's because the teacher's pretty amazing, Alex replied, his grin playful but his eyes sincere. She rolled her eyes but couldn't hide the smile tugging at her lips. Flattery will get you nowhere. Well, almost nowhere. Almost nowhere, he echoed, raising an eyebrow. Her gaze dropped for a moment, fingers fidgeting with the corner of the book. Alex, I've been thinking about us. About what we're doing. The shift in her tone made his chest tighten. And I know this isn't exactly conventional. And part of me feels like I should be the responsible one and put a stop to it. Her voice trembled slightly, her honesty raw and unfiltered. But every time I see you, that logic just disappears. Alex's hand moved instinctively toward hers, his fingers brushing against hers in a gentle, reassuring gesture. Then why fight it? We both know this feels right. Complicated, sure, but real. Her eyes met his, their depths a mixture of vulnerability and longing. You always make everything sound so simple. Maybe because some things don't need to be complicated, he replied softly. In the quiet that followed, they simply looked at each other, words no longer necessary. It was Miss Carter who finally broke the silence, her voice thick with emotion. I care about you, Alex. Probably more than I should. But if we're going to do this, we need to be careful. Take things slow. I'm okay with that, Alex said, his voice steady. As long as it's real. It is, she admitted, her hand squeezing his lightly. So, what do we do now? Alex's grin returned, bright and full of hope. How about we just enjoy whatever this is? One day at a time. Ms. Carter nodded, her smile genuine and unguarded. I think I can handle that. For the first time, the uncertainty didn't feel so daunting. As they continued their conversation, the rain outside faded into a distant murmur, leaving only the warmth between them. The initial thrill of their relationship eventually gave way to the harshness of reality. Days blurred into weeks, and the secrecy that once felt exciting now weighed on them both. Their stolen moments grew more complicated, shadowed by the constant fear of discovery. Alex could feel the change like a storm gathering on the horizon. Ms. Carter's smiles were more strained, her laughter hesitant. Their conversations, once so free and vibrant, now tiptoed around the obvious. One evening, as they sat in her living room surrounded by the familiar clutter of books and papers, Alex couldn't ignore the distance creeping between them. He set his notebook aside, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Something's wrong. You've been distant lately, Alex said, his voice trembling with both worry and accusation. Ms. Carter sighed, her gaze dropping to the floor. It's not you, Alex. It's everything else. This, whatever we're doing, isn't simple. It never was. Then why did we even start? He shot back, his words sharper than intended. If you were just going to pull away the moment things got complicated. Her eyes flashed with hurt, but her voice remained calm. Because I care about you. More than I should. But this situation isn't fair to either of us. You have your whole life ahead of you, and I can't be the one holding you back from that. You're not holding me back, Alex insisted, his frustration spilling over. You're the only person who makes me feel like I matter. Like I'm more than just some kid trying to figure things out. She shook her head, her expression torn. You do matter, Alex. More than you realize. But I can't help feeling like I'm doing something wrong by being with you. And that guilt, it's eating me alive. The words struck him like a blow. He had known she was struggling, but hearing it spoken aloud made it painfully real. His voice softened, the anger melting into desperation. So, what are you saying? That you want this to end? I don't know, she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I just know I can't keep pretending everything's fine when I'm constantly worried about what might happen. To you. To me. To us. Alex's chest tightened, his breath coming in shallow, uneven bursts. I thought what we had was worth fighting for. But if you don't feel the same way, maybe I was wrong. The silence that followed was deafening. Ms. Carter's hands trembled as she clasped them together, her gaze locked on some invisible point beyond the room. I need time to think, she finally said, her voice so small it barely reached him. To figure out what's best for both of us. Alex rose from his chair, the weight of rejection settling heavily on his shoulders. I guess I'll give you that, then. He left without another word, the echo of her sorrowful gaze lingering long after he stepped into the cold night air. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Alex's phone remained stubbornly quiet, and every passing hour stretched his patience thin. His mind churned with 1,000 thoughts, what he could have said, what he should have done differently. But beneath the turmoil, one truth remained. He couldn't just walk away from her. When he finally stood on Ms. Carter's doorstep, his fists clenched with equal parts anxiety and determination. He took a deep breath, knocked, and waited. The door creaked open, And there she was. Her eyes widened at the sight of him, surprise and relief mingling in her expression. Alex, I wasn't expecting you. I know, but I couldn't just leave things like that. His voice was steady, even if his heart was racing. We need to talk. Really talk. She stepped aside, allowing him in. The familiarity of her living room felt comforting and torturous all at once. They sat across from each other, the air between them thick with unspoken words. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Ms. Carter began, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. About us. About what we're doing. And I can't pretend I don't care about you, Alex. Because I do. More than I probably should. Then what's stopping you? Alex asked, his voice quiet but urgent. I know this is messy and complicated. But I care about you too, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this work. She looked at him, her gaze filled with a mixture of longing and fear. I've spent so much time trying to convince myself that this was wrong. That being with you would ruin everything I've built for myself. But pushing you away, it hurts so much more than I expected. Then stop pushing me away. The words came out softly, a plea wrapped in hope. I don't want to lose you. And I don't think you want to lose me either. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but her smile was genuine. You're right. I don't. I don't want to hold you back from everything you could achieve. You have a whole future ahead of you. And I want you to be part of it, Alex replied, his sincerity unwavering. Whatever that looks like. We can figure it out, one step at a time. For the first time in days, Ms. Carter's expression softened with relief. I can't promise this will be easy. But if you're willing to try, so am I. Alex reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The touch felt like coming home. That's all I've ever wanted. Their conversation continued late into the evening, filled with honesty, compromise, and quiet laughter. The path ahead remained uncertain, but the connection between them felt stronger than ever. They would face whatever came their way. Together.